Hey, by any chance, when you were in high school, did you have any exposure to classical Latin? Well, actually, back in the day, quite a while back actually, I took a couple of years of Latin and it gave me an appreciation for the origin of words. Now, today, I want us to focus on one word, and that is perspective. In the classical Latin, you had a verb, specere, which means to see or observe, and we get a word such as spectator from that. And then you have the prefix pre, which simply means through. So when you have perspective, it means that you see through the situation in front of you so that you're able to have a much greater vantage point from which to understand and interpret what you're observing. Now, when you're dealing with a narcissist, they're going to give you the impression that they're very self-confident, that they know what's right, and therefore you're supposed to conform to their ways. And if you don't, then they're going to come down on you hard, or they're going to punish you in some form, and they don't really take input from you because they don't need input. So it seems as though they have this overly inflated ego where they're bigger and better than pretty much anyone else. Well, when you get perspective on that, you can realize that there's something going on behind the scenes there that doesn't necessarily meet the eye, but it certainly can help you interpret and appreciate what's really happening. And as you gain that perspective, then it can certainly inform the way that you respond to that person. Now, let me give you a simple illustration of how this can work. Let's suppose that you have planned a very fun skiing trip. It's wintertime and you want to go skiing to your favorite place. And so you say something to a friend about all the plans that you have and where you're going and what you're going to be doing. And that friend seems to have a very dull and disinterested response to that. It's like, oh, okay. They don't ask follow-up questions or anything. Later on, you learn that several years prior, that friend had a really bad accident while they were skiing, and they broke some bones and they had a very difficult recovery time. Oh, so no wonder they didn't respond with a lot of enthusiasm. When you bring up that topic, it brings up a lot of painful and difficult memory. That's perspective. Now that I know that about my friend, I'm going to understand their responses to me in a much different and informed kind of way. Now, in this video, I'm going to try to bring out 7 different perspectives that we can have about the narcissist, so that as you are trying to figure out what's going on there and how they are impacting you, you can do so in a way that doesn't just allow you to get caught in their clutches, but you can have a well-informed response. Now, before we get to those, I do want to make you aware that we have some resources available to you. Beneath the video, I've included some links to some books. One is my book, The Anger Trap. Another is the book, When Pleasing You is Killing Me. And then we have a third book called Ugly Love by Laura Carranza. And so I hope that you would find those books to be very helpful to you. And then if you would, we'd like for you to subscribe to our channel so that we can inform you of videos that come along in the future. Now, let's take a look at some of the 7 perspectives that we can have regarding the narcissist. The first perspective that I want you to pick up on is the narcissist does not understand the essence of love. Now, when we talk about having a love relationship, we talk about compassion, we talk about affirmation, we talk about bringing a sense of acceptance to each other. In the mind and in the history of the narcissist, they don't really calculate with respect to those kinds of issues. To them, love means you have met conditions. And they were conditionally loved as a general rule when they were growing up, and they learned to apply conditions to other people. So when they say, I love you, it means, at least for the moment, you have met my conditions. But the minute you don't meet their conditions, then it's like, okay, it's all off the table. I don't love you anymore. One of the aspects of healthy love is there's going to be an affirmation and a goodness toward you, whether you meet the conditions or not. The narcissist has not learned to think that way. So you're going to have to remind yourself when they either give you or withdraw the love that it's based on a mindset that perhaps is quite different from yours. A second perspective is narcissists do not know how to trust. When you have a sense of trust, that means that you see certain people as being a safe haven, And they don't see safeness in relationships. Going back to that whole business of not knowing how to love, and it's all being based on conditions, they learn to have a defensiveness. They approach the world with a sense of wariness, like, are you for me or are you against me? And so rather than having a trusting form of interaction, they can be on guard, they can be very cautious, and this is why, by the way, they have a very low ability to receive input. It's kind of like, if you tell me something that you don't like about me, that means that you don't like me, and that's no good. It's because they don't know how to trust. Because in healthy relationships, if we talk about difficulties and we have trust, we can share and we can discuss. But the narcissist doesn't have that in their skill set. Or a third perspective on narcissists. Narcissists do not cultivate relationships. That's important for you to understand that. Now, they can have a lot of acquaintances and they can high five people and they can say, oh yeah, let me call this person because I know them and they can do this for me. But it's not a relationship in the classic sense of how you and I would think of relationship. Instead, narcissists cultivate assets. And that's a very important distinction. They're thinking not how can you and I engage with each other in such a way that we know one another from a full perspective, but instead they're thinking, are you useful to me today? Are you not useful? If you're useful, I'm going to stick with you. If you're not useful, I'm just going to dismiss you or discard you or insult you. And so you're an asset, but you're not a relationship person to them. A fourth perspective is narcissists do not really cultivate a sense of gratitude. When they are growing up, for whatever reason, they develop an attitude of entitlement. What have you done for me lately? Let me explain to you what I deserve. Let me talk with you about what I want, and it's your task to give me what I want. Now, that's either coming from a position of being spoiled and treated in a doting kind of way, or it may be that they have a complete opposite of that, where there's so much emptiness that they think, hey, I deserve a whole lot more than that, but it dominates their thinking. So when good things come their way, rather than saying, thank you, that's really nice, then their mentality is more or less, well, it's about time. Why didn't you give me that earlier? And when am I going to get some more? They don't have an appreciation for gratitude, which is a major ingredient for true healthy relating. A fifth characteristic, and this are perspective on the narcissist, and this is another big one. Narcissists are driven by shame and devaluation. When they were in their earlier developmental years, there's a high probability that they were exposed to a lot of shaming communications, and it may have been directly to them, or it may have been that they saw how other people are shamed for their humanity. And so they begin thinking, okay, there's a lot of guilt going on around there, and devaluation. Some people are just low. I've got to make sure that I'm not on the receiving end of that. And so you've heard the old phrase, the best defense is a good offense. So they, instead of being on the receiving end of shame and devaluation, they give shame and devaluation. That allows them to have that upper hand. And so when they see you and they understand that you've made mistakes or you think differently, they'll tell you how worthless you are or how you have no value to them, because that's the way they've learned to think. They don't think one equal to another equal. It's all about one up, one down. Another perspective is the narcissist has not developed a sense of introspection. To them, the world is what you see out there. They look only at measurables. Did you do this correctly? Did you do this incorrectly? They'll focus on the what or the how or the should, but they don't focus on the why. The introspective person says, well, as we go through our interactions with each other, let's have a real well-developed understanding of why we do what we do. The narcissist is like, nah, I don't need to think that way. Just do what I tell you to do, because that's the way they've learned to think. And then a seventh perspective, and this is kind of a culmination of the other six, is narcissists truly disdain having their weaknesses and their flaws and their emotions exposed. It's like it leaves them in a very vulnerable position, and because they don't have that love and trust and appreciation for the human side, It's like, I cannot let you see my negatives. And so they keep a facade up, and they've learned a long time ago that you just have to look the part, and you have to be superior. You have to show yourself to be invulnerable, because this is not a very safe place. They have a sense of cynicism that guides them. Now, knowing these perspectives, let's take a look at how you might respond to that. And first and foremost, what I'm getting at is you want to maintain a sense of objectivity towards the narcissist versus subjectivity. The subjective reaction is all the emotion and the tension and strain that you might react with. The objective person says, let me figure out what the facts are here, and let me figure out what kind of information I need to load up in this computer of mine, and operate based on what my facts will say. And that leads you to another thought, and that is you learn how to recognize what you can and cannot control in your world. The narcissist is all about control. They want to control you, how you think, how you act, and a mistake that you can make is you can respond with counter control. It's like, well, if I can make that person think the way I say it ought to be, then things are going to get a lot better. And so you find yourself in an emotional and communicational tug of war, and you're going to lose every time. You can't control the narcissist. Keep in mind the perspective that the narcissist is operating from a damaged position. So many of the fundamental issues that go into the making of healthy relationship were simply not well established on the inside of them, and you can't control the fact that that is or that happened there. And so what you can control is who you are in response to that person, which means that as you experience the narcissist with all of their damage and with all of the dysfunction that comes with it, I'm hoping that you can decide that person may be operating from a position of hurt and inadequacy that they cannot see and they will not deal with. But I'm going to be able to see what's happening there, and I'm going to operate based on what makes sense to me, and that allows you to have a sense of boundaries. I operate according to my principles and my standards because I'm not going to allow a damaged person to dictate who I'm going to be. Now, let's keep in mind that you tend to see the narcissist through the lens of your own normalcy, but you can't really afford to have that happen. They're not in a normal frame of mind. And so with perspective and with an appreciation for the fact that this person is dealing or is operating with a foundation that is not well laid, then I'm hoping that you can go back to that thought that says, oh, now I understand why they respond the way they do. You may not like it, but when you understand, it's like, therefore, I need to operate based on my good wisdom, my good principles. I cannot let that person who's got all this damage dictate who I'm going to be.